Hello and welcome to ESL Revolution. I am your content creator and professor, Dr. B. Welcome back, everybody. Well, I'm taking a break from doing my shooting upstairs because, well, today is just a beautiful day. My kids wanted to come outside. We're all masked up. I'm sure you are as well during this whole coronavirus explosion here in Daegu. Although the good news is that the number of new cases is significantly dropping down, and that is so good for the city. It's good news for South Korea that we're starting to see some improvement in those numbers. Really happy about that. Again, a huge shout out to the medical staff here in Daegu, as well as everybody in the city just pulling together to making sure that we can kind of reduce the influence of coronavirus over the next coming days and weeks. So keep it up, Daegu. Hwaiting, you can do it. Today, hopefully you can hear everything through the mask okay, but today I want to actually delve into another aspect of the English language setup that I have on YouTube. And that has to do actually with the nature of kind of tips and hints that you can do as ESL or EFL students or learners, ELL, English language learners, although that's primarily for lower levels, but what you can do to kind of get yourself going a little bit in this environment. I've been around since 2005 here in Korea, and I can tell you that every year that I teach, every semester that I teach, whether it's at elementary school all the way up to university, there is some innate fear about the language and about how we express ourselves in a foreign language. And I can certainly sympathize with you about that, and I'm hoping that today I can give you just a couple of things that can help you kind of focus a little bit and to reduce the overall stress and anxiety of using the language not only in the classroom, primarily that would be where it is because this is an EFL environment, so primarily in the classroom, but what happens when I see you outside of the classroom and you just look at me and go, oh, native teacher, oh my God, and walk away? You see, that's part of that fear, that built-in anxiety that, in all honesty, shouldn't really be there because you're in my class. And so we talk in the class, and why is it that if I see you outside of the class, you don't want to engage? Well, that's the mindset that I want to deal with today, and in this particular series of tips and hints on how to engage and how to feel confident with the language. So the first thing that you can do, the very first thing that you can do is to coin a phrase from Nike, just do it. That's right, just do it. The problem that a lot of people have in language development is actually the starting process, actually opening up your mouth for the first time and seeing that, well, there's actually something coming out. And when we begin to do that, when we just speak for the sake of speaking, quite often that begins to trickle down into a reduction of fear. You're probably going to be nervous for the first few minutes of doing that, but then as you keep doing it, your body becomes normalized to the idea that you're speaking and doing something so different. Now, there is some biology going on here, right? We have this thing called fight or flight. I either want to run away or I want to get closer and tackle what is going on. Now, that fight or flight response actually is key to understanding your anxiety to learning language. See, because we have those two things, we have the fight or the flight in our biology, in our evolution, we have those two things. Anything that makes us nervous or anxious, we want to pull away from. We don't want to engage because, in fact, our evolution essentially tells us, wait, you're afraid. You should run away. Because, why? Why? That's a good question. Why? Why is it that we are afraid of language? See, here's the thing. That fight or flight response was really good when we were hunter-gatherers, let's say. We're walking around, we're out trying to hunt for animals. We see something, and that anxiety peaks up in us. It kind of builds up. It's evolution's way of saying, hey, you gotta be careful because, well, that animal is 20 times larger than you and could probably kill you and eat you. So it's a good time to run away. But see, here's the thing. That flight response is actually a leftover from our biology, from our evolution. And really, does it have anything to do with language? Well, no, it doesn't. Because you see, it's a protective mechanism. And in a sense, the language isn't going to eat you, right? It's not going to eat you up. It's not a giant animal that's going to clobber you and tear you from limb to limb. Well, if the language isn't actually doing that, the fight or flight response that we have is completely inappropriate for the situation. So, how do we bring down that level of anxiety? That is a really important thing. First thing I can say is, take a breath. Just take a breath. Take a quick moment, breathe in, breathe out, and just relax your breathing. That's the first thing. Second thing that you can do in those first few seconds when you're about to say something, take your breath, breathe in, breathe out, and don't worry about what's coming out of your mouth. I know that it's really hard to do. We have this built-in mechanism where we don't really want to engage the language. But in actual fact, we should use the language at the time when we're most afraid. The reason is, once we do that, our fear levels and our anxiety levels begin to automatically drop. Why is that? Well, this has to do with a couple of hormones that actually float around in our heads. These hormones provide, some hormones provide us with a feeling of euphoria or enjoyment. Think about if you're with a significant other and you get those butterflies in your stomach and you're going to go see somebody that you love. And you have that feeling inside of you of excitement. Well, guess what? That's serotonin. Serotonin is a euphoric chemical in our body that makes us feel good. On the other side, we have other chemicals, and for some reason, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. It starts with a C. That hormone is the fear hormone. It's the stress hormone that activates when that fight or flight response kicks in. And when that occurs, we begin to step back. How we engage that is we push through that anxiety. Runners often have a thing called hitting the wall. And this is real. You're running for a long time and then all of a sudden you kind of hit a brick wall where your body just decides to not go forward anymore. But the thing with distance runners, people are running marathons, is they know how to deal with that. And they push through that wall. Once they push to the other side, their body normalizes again, and then they can continue. And see, that's what we need to do. Because most often when we're dealing with a language, we stop when we hit the wall. We don't want to go further. But no. We actually need to go beyond that. We need to take our anxiety, kick it in the rear end, and push forward. So that's the second thing that we need to do. And we need to be aggressive about doing that. And I can assure you that it doesn't matter the level of language that you're using, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. That doesn't matter. We all have that anxiety. We all have that built-in fear. Now, some of you, especially beginner levels, you might be thinking, oh, but teacher, I don't really know how to speak. My language is so poor. Well, interesting you say that, because I hear that from every student. Not just students who are bad, but students who can actually speak and carry on a conversation. Now, the question is, why is that? Well, I think, again, it comes back to this notion of fear. That no matter how well we speak in a language, we always are apologizing for the fact that we can't. But I can assure you that you can. I can also assure you that 90% of what you're saying, I'm probably going to understand, even if you're only giving me 30 or 40% of the words that are coming out of your mouth. Now, that makes a big difference here. And this is another thing that leads me to helping you when we're talking about tips and hints. Most native teachers, at least in my personal case and others that I've met and talked to, are pretty adept at trying to fill in the blanks of your conversation. So if you're missing a few words as you go through and the sentence is garbled, maybe, or grammatically incorrect, possibly, we can actually put everything back together and rearrange a sentence for you so that I can repeat that full sentence back to you. And I would say something like this. Oh, do you mean jum jum jum? In other words, I'm going to take an educated guess at what you think and what you're saying to make sure that I understand. And at the same time, I'm giving you the sentence back so you can learn what the full sentence is. You see how that works? We work together to build your sentence structure. Now, as we do this more and more, you will understand what my role as the teacher will be in your classroom to help you fill in the blanks. And that will create more dialogue. And subsequently, the more dialogue we do, the less anxiety happens, because you know that I'm not going to get mad at you for having a sentence that's incomplete. And you know what? We don't care. That's right, everybody. We don't care. We don't care whether or not your sentence is complete. We don't care if your sentence has grammatical errors. The whole point of a conversation class is to try to speak regardless of those things. That's what I want you to be able to focus on when we're dealing with these issues about being in a classroom. So far we've talked about things like fear. We've talked about anxiety. We've talked about being kind of pushing through that. We've talked about the biology of our brains and our hormones as to why we are afraid in certain situations. I've also talked about how students of any level will tell me that they're not good in English, even though they are. Now, here's another thing that I think, and I'm going to finish on this one. Another reason why English can be a difficult thing to grasp. Practically speaking, all of your effort in Korea for English has been primarily to take the KSAT, the Korean Scholastic Aptitude Test. Your English is about the technical aspects of the language, the grammatical structure of English language, where you have to have a multiple choice test to pick the correct answer. That's what you have been primarily focused on. Well, I can assure you that that's not really the language. I mean, it is, but that's not what we will be doing from a day-to-day basis. Our engagement together is to reduce the fear, to give you a chance to talk to us, which in turn will reduce the fear. Everything works together. When you understand that your English training up to now has been test-focused, you come into the classroom and you realize that English is not the spoken language that we do in class is not designed specifically for a test per se. Rather, it is a way for us to have fun and engage together in meaningful dialogue. Meaning, depending on the level that we're at, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, depending on that level, if you fit within that beginner framework and you try your hardest, even if you're making mistakes, and it doesn't matter, as I've said before, even if you're trying your hardest, you're going to do well in my class. I would much rather have an individual who tries, even if their sentences are not perfect, than a person who's perfect and not trying. Do you understand the difference? A person who tries, even though the sentences are not 100% correct, generally those people do better in my class. And there's a reason why. They're pushing through that fear and they're engaging me and the language at the same time. Well, everybody, this is the first video in the tips and hints category of the ESL channel in the YouTube, in the ESL Revolution YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. Stay safe. Remember, we have school in just a couple of days, so let's get on it. Anyway, thanks very much. This is Ben from ESL Revolution, and remember, be the revolution. Peace.